It feels good to be bad.
Over 40 years ago, legendary film critic, the late great Roger Ebert, claimed that, and I quote, "Each film is only as good as its villain." They always say that bad guys are usually more interesting than the villains. Although I'm not sure if I would always agree with that statement, I do understand that argument. When it comes to the role of a bad guy or protagonist in a movie or TV show, it's very crucial, often serving as the catalyst for conflict and driving the protagonist towards growth and resolution. It's always so fascinating to see what drives a bad guy, what's their motivation. What's their purpose? What makes their quote-unquote clock tick? Which is why today I'll be presenting some of my favorite bad guys to ever exist on television or in movies. So without further ado, let's get straight to the list. Kicking off this list with a bang is Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. While Sarah Michelle Gellar's performance as Buffy Summers was undeniably phenomenal, but in the end, the best character from Buffy the Vampire Slayer had to be Spike. Brought to life by James Marster, Spike was initially meant to be a one-time villain, killed off during the midpoint of Buffy the Vampire Show's second season, but eventually he was kept around simply because he was such an instant hit with audiences, mainly due to the character's remarkable arc throughout the show's entirety. With his bleach blonde hair and his signature trench coat, James Marster simply stole every episode he was featured on, playing Spike, who grew more vulnerable and far deeper as the show slowly turned him into a world-saving champion, but also as an all-out villain. When he first arrives on the show's second season, Spike is a character who is evil through and through, a gleeful murderer without a soul, intent on ruining and killing the lives of Buffy and her friends. But as the series went on, thanks to some remarkable storytelling, he grew closer to the gang and eventually finds himself with a soul as he falls in love with the character of Buffy. The vampire's journey was funny, tragic, violent, and enrapturing, and James Marster made it so you loved every side of him. For the next villain on the list is Bellatrix Lestrange from the Harry Potter franchise. The Harry Potter franchise had produced plenty of memorable villains, from Draco Malfoy, Barty Crouch Jr., and even Dolores Umbridge, but my personal favorite would have to be Bellatrix Lestrange, portrayed by Helena Bonham Carter. Known as Lord Voldemort's most faithful and devoted disciple, Helena Bonham Carter was just absolutely magnificent as the deliciously cruel sadist that the Harry Potter franchise needed in the later movies. Some people have this argument that Bellatrix was way worse than Lord Voldemort, although I'm not sure if I would completely agree with that statement, but when it comes to looking at her resume of her heinous actions, I wouldn't digress. Bellatrix was just rotten to the core, as she would kill and torture people and takes pure enjoyment in her wicked actions. Although I'm not gonna lie, it kind of disappointed me the way she was utilized in Deathly Hallows Part 2. And come to think about it in hindsight, her death was a tiny bit underwhelming as she would just explode into red sparks, as I do feel like she deserved a much better death. But regardless of that, Helena Bonham's performance more than makes up for it, as Bellatrix served as a great addition to the Harry Potter series as a sadist villain who was wildly unpredictable. Next villain, Roy Batty from Blade Runner. One of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time, Blade Runner is such a masterpiece that is way ahead of its time. One of the main reasons why this movie holds up as an endearing classic is that it features a brilliantly realized villain in Roy Batty at the center of its plot. As the de facto leader of a group of replicants targeted by assassins, Roy Batty is a sympathetic and complex bad guy whose biggest crime is his simple desire to go on living. One of the main reasons why the iconic Tears in the Rain monologue holds up so well is mainly due to the fact that it challenges viewers to reconsider the view of his actions throughout the film's entirety. Initially, Batty is portrayed as a violent and dangerous replicant who poses as a threat to society. However, as the film progresses, we see that he is simply being who is afraid of his own morality and the fact that he's running out of time. Director Ridley Scott did such a remarkable job of making us feel sorry for the character of Roy Batty, as we realize that he, just like us, is searching for meaning in a rapidly changing and technologically advanced world. Frank Booth from Blue Velvet. One of David Lynch's critically acclaimed films, Blue Velvet is such a magnificent thriller that's all about crime in suburbia, following a college student who seeks in deeper into the dark underbelly of the idyllical town of Lumberton. The man behind the darkness is Frank Booth, whom is excellently portrayed by the late Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper's outrageous performance is so captivating, as he makes Booth's dangerous energy seem authentically real, as his mysterious recreational use of an oxygen mask making him instantly memorable. With his wide eyes and his incredibly disturbing yet very entertaining nature, Dennis Hopper's performance as Frank Booth is one for the ages, as David Lynch's most iconic villain. Next is Harley Quinn from the DC Extended Universe. Now, I think we can all agree that the DC Extended Universe was doomed from the start. It was very clear from the jump that the franchise only existed to compete with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was a humongous mistake on the part of Warner Brothers. As a result, the DCU resulted to being such a sloppy, bloated, inconsistent mess of a franchise that ultimately ended on a very miserable whimper. But one of the few things that this franchise got right was the casting of Dr. Harleen Quinzel, aka Harley Quinn, whom was phenomenally formerly portrayed by Australian actress Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie was born to play Harley Quinn. Actually, scratch that. She is Harley Quinn, much like how Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, and much like how Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. Despite the poor reviews for the 2016 Suicide Squad movie, Robbie's portrayal of Harley Quinn easily was the standout of the entire movie, and with this, it was enough to gain international praise, seeing her reprise the role to greater effect in Birds of Prey and 2021's The Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn. Margot Robbie helped the character evolve from villainous companion to the Joker into a compelling and exciting character capable of supporting an entire movie by herself. Not only does she perfectly nail the voice, she also captures the unhinged yet charismatic nature of the character of Harley Quinn while adding human elements and character development to turn Harley Quinn into a pop culture phenomenon. Next villain is Koba from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Out of all the villains of the Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy, none of them could hold a candle or even match the intensity of the treacherous Koba. Koba was the perfect foil to the main protagonist of the trilogy, Caesar. While Caesar learned love and compassion from his time hanging with humans, Koba only knew suffering and fear, as he was physically and emotionally scarred from the years of abuse by human caretakers. Harboring an intense hatred for his former oppressors, Koba's desire to wipe out humanity led him down a destructive path where neither humans nor apes were safe from his wrath. It's easy to feel sympathy for this tragic villain, and even while committing terrible acts like betraying Caesar and starting a war, the audience understands where he comes from and why he's filled with so much hatred and rage. Overall, Koba was the definitive antagonist of the trilogy, a terrifying yet a very tragic character who encompasses the best qualities of the Planet of the Apes reboot films. Next up, Regina George from Mean Girls. The character Regina George is like every high schooler's worst nightmare. There's a really good reason why this queen bee is able to rule North Shore High with an iron fist, as she brings fear to anyone who dealt with somebody like her in high school. Regina George has the philosophy of a dictator because even with her being a stereotypical popular girl, she has this obsession with control and power, as she's willing to do anything to keep her crown as the most popular girl at North Shore High, and doing it by any means necessary. Throughout the movie's runtime, she commands control of the audience's attention with every second that she's on screen and runs circles around her co-stars with every scene. Rachel McAdams' ability to deliver cutting remarks with a smile on her face is unnerving, as her character Regina could flip from laughing with her minions to attacking her victims with a glare that will turn your blood ice cold within in a matter of seconds. Plus, she also gives the character Regina this effortless demeanor, not letting little things get to her because she always gets what she wants in the end. Well, it's initially funny to see Katie take Regina off her pedestal, but then eventually she turns into her own version of Regina, which is a pure reminder that popularity and power can get into somebody's head, and people are always willing to fight for the crown. Once in a generation part, and Rachel McAdams made the most of every second of it. The Countess from American Horror Story Hotel. American Horror Story has seen plenty of excellent villains, but if you were to ask me, none of them within the extensive and connected history of the show was as stylish as Countess Elizabeth, aka the Countess, portrayed by multi-platinum artist Lady Gaga. Serving as the central villain of the show's 5th season, American Horror Story Hotel, the Countess ruled the Hotel Cortez with an iron fist, as she manipulates the guests who are staying at the hotel in order to achieve her goals of addiction, affection, and protection against vengeful spirits after her. One of the biggest pop stars of the 21st century, and also of all time, bringing in Lady Gaga into American Horror Story was a masterstroke, as she worked wonders within the season's themes and aesthetics, and things wouldn't have been as quite as sinister and menacing without her inspired villainous turn. Next villain on the list, Bodie from Point Break. Catherine Bigelow's cult classic Point Break is one of my personal favorite action movies of all time. While Keanu Reeves may be the main protagonist as FBI agent Johnny Utah, it's the film's antagonist Bodie, the leader of the surfer criminal group known as the Ex-Presidents, portrayed by the late yet eternally great Patrick Swayze. In terms of coolness, Bodie's like that one bad guy who's hard to dislike, as Swayze brought so much charm to the character, who's a carefree criminal who just likes surfing and skydiving. Swayze's performance as the character Bodie was magnificent, as he makes the audience root for the character throughout the film's whole runtime. Not to mention the fact that his chemistry with Keanu Reeves is absolutely fantastic, whether if they're allies or adversaries. He's such a cool villain who perfectly fits the film's surfer bro tone, and it's a major reason behind Point Break's continued success as a cult classic. Next is Tyler Durden from Fight Club. Much like Bodie from Point Break, Tyler Durden is a bad guy who's just too awesome to hate. Charmingly played by Brad Pitt in one of the greatest works of his career, the muscle-bound character pretty much represents what most men aspire to be in today's society. From his carefree attitude, his greasy spiked hair, his muscular physique, his aura, his drip, he pretty much is like the total package. Tyler's unique connection to the narrator is deeply compelling and magnificently executed, and his elusive, mercurial, shifting nature provides Fight Club with a strong anchor, allowing Edward Norton's character to experiment experiment with the narrative. With the character Tyler Durden being charismatic yet menacing, he's not only just one of the most iconic villains of all time, but honestly just one of the most iconic characters in the history of cinema. Next is Mother Gothel from Tangled. Mother Gothel is one of the most underrated villains in Disney history because I don't feel like she ever gets the proper credit or appreciation she deserves for how truly great she was at being bad. If you ask me, I'd put her in the same leagues as some of the all-time greatest Disney villains, along with Scar from The Lion King, Jafar from Aladdin, and Claude Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The story of Tangled is about the character Rapunzel, whose hair stretches 70 feet long and has magical healing abilities of restoring a person's youth or health. All in an effort of keeping herself young, Mother Gothel kidnaps baby Rapunzel and keeps her in a hidden tower in the woods, as she would raise Rapunzel as her own. Despite raising Rapunzel as her own by pretending to be her biological mother, Gothel never had the capability of ever truly loving the character of Rapunzel, and if you see this particular scene where she hugs her, she doesn't kiss Rapunzel's forehead, she kisses her hair, because keep in mind, her hair is the one thing that's keeping her alive. Mother Gothel isn't just a perfect example of a real-life narcissistic toxic mother, but also a gaslighting villain, because the way she's so dangerously good at playing mind games with Rapunzel by manipulating her to get what she wants, and doing it by any means necessary. Not to mention Gothel's very soothing and seductive voice. I mean, after all, she was played by the amazing Donna Murphy, which makes it even better. Dr. Otto Octavius, aka Dr. Octopus, aka Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2. Even though Willem Dafoe's portrayal of the Green Goblin is undeniably iconic, as he displayed a very monstrous Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde performance that legitimately terrified me as a kid, Alfred Molina's Dr. Otto Octavius, aka Dr. Octopus, takes the cake for me, as he is the one character in all the Spider-Man movies who most effectively embodies all the elements of a great comic book villain. The depressing downfall of this once brilliant scientist is one of the main reasons why Spider-Man 2 holds up as one of the strongest movies in the comic book genre, as Molina made Doc Ock to look truly menacing with his four mechanical arms, but also delivers a very human, tormented, and layered performance as a man who loses everything due to a science experiment gone wrong, including his wife Rosie. I remember how extremely satisfied I was to see the character of Octavius making his triumphant return in Spider-Man No Way Home, completely redeeming himself by becoming a hero, adding even more impact to his nuanced performance back in 2004. Next is Mads Mikkelsen's Hannibal Lecter from Hannibal. When it was announced that Dutch actor Mads Mikkelsen would be landing the role of Hannibal Lecter, Mikkelsen was reportedly adamant that he was going to make the character his own without attempting to emulate Anthony Hopkins' iconic portrayal in The Silence of the Lambs, and make it his own he did, finding the perfect balance between being eerily charming and devastatingly evil. Mikkel's performance in Hannibal was just so remarkable, as it's a masterclass of subtlety, as he does such an extraordinary job of masking Hannibal's evilness, as you'll never know the perfect time when he'll strike at you like a cobra. Well, Anthony Hopkins may be the actor most associated with the role of Hannibal Lecter, but when it came to Mads Mikkelsen's version, he was given more time with the iconic cruel killer, as his performance allowed Lecter to feel more dangerous, complicated, and dastardly more than ever. For my runner-up is Scar from The Lion King. When it comes to discussing the greatest Disney villains of all time, none of them are more iconic than Scar from The Lion King. As the brother of Mufasa, whom is the king of the Pride Lands, Scar is always lurking in the shadows with hate and jealousy. But after Simba being born, his jealousy towards Mufasa grows bigger and bigger. Not caring about family relations at all, Scar blatantly murders his brother Mufasa. To make matters worse, he then puts the blame on young Simba for the murder, causing the young cub to go into hiding, making it look like he was responsible for his father's death, which is very deplorable, yet very smart on Scar's part. What makes Scar Disney's most threatening villain ever is mainly due to his manipulative and malicious nature, not to mention his very Shakespearean quality to his villainy. On top of that, he just has like the perfect voice for a villain, as he is voiced by Oscar-winning actor Jeremy Irons. And saving the best for last is the Joker from The Dark Knight. Now, I could put this in a lot of fancy terms, but simply put, Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker in The Dark Knight changed the perception of what actors could do in comic book movies with his posthumous Oscar-winning performance as Batman's most fierce and iconic foe, the Clown Prince of Crime. While it's tragic that Heath Ledger died just 6 months prior before The Dark Knight's release, back in 2008 at just the young age of 28, his performance in this movie was widely acclaimed as it took the whole world by storm. The two things of what made Ledger's Joker stood out was his psychological complexity and unpredictability. The way he switches from dark humor to terrifying brutality in an instant is so disturbing yet magnificent, as it leaves audiences at the edge of their seats. The character's unsettling demeanor, coupled with his iconic lines such as "Why so serious?" cements Ledger's Joker as one of the most memorable and chilling villains in cinematic history. Overall, Heath Ledger's posthumous Academy Award for his role was a true testament to his exceptional acting and dedication, forever securing his Joker Joker as a legendary and indelible part of cinematic culture.